If you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now, along with the bell icon so you can be notified whenever a new video is posted. And if you're already subscribed, check and make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you. And of course, be sure to give the video a like as well as share it on your social media. The white supremacists hate that. And now, the Sunday address. As everyone knows by now, Diddy was acquitted of the most serious charges in his federal trial. So, for the enterprising U.S. attorneys out there who think that they're all going to make their careers by putting high-profile black men in prison and they'll ride that horse to glory, well, that may not be the easy W they think it is. Going back and looking at some of the things people were saying, there were a lot of folks who were claiming that Diddy's defense was taking heavy hits from the prosecution, and of course a lot of these white media headlines were saying, "Big trouble for Diddy, the latest witness is hurting Diddy, oh he's done, he loses big." Even though the trial wasn't over yet, that's how they were talking about it. It was meant to program and condition the public mind. But it also just goes to show that you can never be completely sure how these things are going to turn out. Now, I wasn't following this trial. That's the reason why, for the people who were sending me messages about it, what did I think of this, what did I think about it, I didn't even bother to respond because I don't care about the fate of P. Diddy. However, of course, as I've commented on the past of other black male celebrities who have been jammed up, I do think that there's 2 cents that I ought to throw in. The state didn't really have a case. Whether you like Diddy or hate him, he's done nothing for the black community, so I wasn't concerned about his fate. The reality is he is a proxy. These same federal prosecutors who began putting the case on Diddy during the Biden years, they're not going after these violent anti-black hate criminals. They're not trying to make a point of making a career out of going after those guys. We're going to condition the public mind that we're going after these white supremacists. You commit a crime against a black person, we're going to use you as a horse to get ourselves into a higher tax bracket and a more cushy federal job. They're not doing that. Instead, they're trying to do a 21st century orgy of the Mann Act against high-profile black defendants. They try to take anything and twist it and lie about it and exaggerate it so that they can falsely claim that this guy over here, this black man, why, he's the biggest criminal. It's the trial of the century, yeah, for the 3rd time in a row this year. Prosecutors in this case, they knew that what they were saying were lies or at the very least gross exaggerations, but they also knew that the white media wasn't going to say that. Nobody in the white media was saying that Diddy shouldn't have been charged. Nobody in the white media was saying that he had been overcharged, or that prosecutors need to be careful that they don't overplay their hand. Nobody was saying that at all. In other words, they didn't say the usual narrative that they always drag out whenever a white cop is accused of killing a black person. They don't point out in those cases how the defense can't get an acquittal or how tough it's going to be. They don't sit there and talk that way about it. Instead, the white media says it's all about how prosecutors are doing too much and how juries are reluctant to convict for thus and so. They talk about how hard it's going to be, how hard it is to get a conviction. That's what they say then. They say that from the very outset in those cases, all is a way to influence the public, and they hope to influence whatever jurors are going to serve on those trials, is to send the message loud and clear, wink and a nod, hey, you're not supposed to convict. Well, the white media acted as if this case was a slam dunk. After R. Kelly's conviction, they thought they were on some sort of a roll, but the reality is their case was weak. And to show how weak the state's case was, Diddy's defense team didn't even bother to call a single witness during their trial, which was nearly 2 months, by the way. All of these witnesses getting up there and all these people telling themselves, oh, Diddy is so dead. Oh, look at this, look at that. See, that's something the white media didn't make much hay about. The fact that there was no need to put up any sort of witnesses to rebut any of this stuff. That's how weak they felt the case was. But as we've seen over and over again, even though Diddy's been acquitted of the most serious charges, the judge still refused to grant him bail, claiming that he poses a danger. Though, of course, he couldn't say to whom. This is something we see all the time. This is how judges force a black defendant to basically serve a prison sentence, even though they're innocent, by keeping them incarcerated for months, if not years on end. Something that they don't do with white defendants. If Harvey Weinstein wasn't made to be behind bars during his original trial, then it makes no sense to act like a black music executive's going to go on a kill spree or something when he's out on bail. But that's how they're acting about it, because they got to try to justify this mess somehow. Now, the most recent white media reports are that when Diddy got back to prison, he was greeted to a standing ovation from the inmates because they knew what he was up against. That it's only too easy for a prosecutor to get a conviction on a black man, regardless of if they're guilty, and they were glad to see someone beat the government. And speaking of the government, you can bet right now that Republicans and Democrats alike are both putting their empty little heads together, asking themselves, what new laws do we need to put on the books at the federal level to make sure that the next Diddy doesn't get away? Because that's what they do with black defendants too. Anytime a black defendant actually gets acquitted, oh, that's a flaw in the system. We got to find a way to seal those gaps. We can't have any of these black defendants thinking that they're actually going to get their day in court and that they have a chance of actually being found not guilty. We can't have that. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if during Trump's administration, you're going to find some laws getting passed. They're going to be doing it quietly, by the way, but some stuff's going to get snuck through and it's going to have total bipartisan support. Now, again, I haven't been following the Diddy trial, so I don't know whether Diddy's been getting support from the hip-hop industry, all of these rappers, many of whom know what it means to be jammed up on exaggerated or even trumped-up charges. And yet, I'm willing to bet that not too many of them were going to the mat for him, certainly not publicly. If not, is that because they're all scared of becoming the next target of some prosecutor looking to make a name for themselves? Some U.S. attorney or some local DA looking to impress either of the political parties in their quest for higher office? All of these guys doing their asinine little music videos, showing themselves with clothes, cars, and hoes. All of this money that they got, everybody's got all this money, and yet nobody puts any of that money to use trying to get some of their own hand-picked candidates in those prosecutors' offices, even a state attorney general, to say nothing of putting influence on either of the parties. Hey, here's some people who need to be made into U.S. attorneys. They're not using any of their money to try to influence these things. They're too busy basically goofing off and hanging out. White power knows their stooges. They know their Negroes very well. If white power decides to put you on, that's because you've already shown them that you're not going to say a word or lift a finger against them. That's the price of admission if you want to be one of white power's bootlicks. You got to make it clear that you'll be a good boy and you're not going to challenge the status quo. You won't do anything to protect yourself from their inevitable attack that is going to predictably come at you. And in that respect, these entertainers and athletes, they put themselves in prison. Black people know the game by now. As long as it's gone on, we should. But as the black media has long told you, these black celebrities don't value their freedom or even their money above all else. Validation from white society, that's what's at the top of their list of priorities. That's more important to them than their money, than their freedom, or their very survival, and it's certainly more important to them than the well-being of the black community at large. All those fake pats on the head that they get, and the stupid parties that they're allowed to come to, and the gutter sex that they have with their interracial sexual access, that's what they value. So of course, black celebrities are not going to do anything to stop themselves from being targeted. Since when does a clown stop a circus? Now that the Diddy saga is over, at least for the time being, you know there's going to be a number of civil suits and some aspiring DAs who are going to give him the Cosby treatment and run on a promise to put him away. The question will be, who is the next celebrity to be prosecuted for some kind of unsanctioned hanky-panky? Well, in a just world, Jared Leto would have already been indicted. He should have already been dragged into court in leg irons, put behind bars until we'll let you out if you can get yourself acquitted. This guy apparently went to the Ezra Miller school of dating. The similarities between these two weirdos is astonishing. Ezra Miller ran off with a girl whose father accused him of having groomed her since she was age 12. The father in this case withdrew his complaint, and the girl is now running around with Miller's so-called music band. Speaking of which, Jared Leto also has a music band too. Among the allegations, Leto's accused of asking sexual questions to a 16-year-old girl, walking out of a room naked in front of a 17-year-old and exposing himself. And there's another woman who claims that she was underage when she began texting Leto, so she reached out to him is what that means. That's what Jared Leto's lawyer says, and the white media's had no problem signal boosting that particular message. This young woman claims that Jared Leto would ask her uncomfortable questions during visits to his home, so she went to his house too, and that during one visit when she was 18, he suddenly pulled his junk out and started playing with it. One woman said that she was definitely not the youngest person there while attending one of Leto's parties at his home in the 2000s when she was 18. She also alleged that the focus of the party appeared to be getting girls to skinny dip. Now, I'm wondering why it is that we haven't been seeing these young ladies and why it is the white media hasn't been putting together some sort of collage showing us all of their faces. The white media is doing their best to give Jared Leto a pass. No attempts to gather as many accusers together for a photo op as possible. No attempts to do a comparison between him and R. Kelly, or even between him and Ezra Miller. I guess nobody wants to reopen that can of worms, huh? Nobody's trying to tee either of these high-profile white figures up to be prosecuted. Oh, these guys, they happen to be music figures too, just like R. Kelly and P. Diddy. But we don't want the music to stop, now do we? Nobody wants their careers to end. And nobody in the white media is making a crusade out of mentioning them every 5 seconds, or the accusations against them. Yeah, Bill Maher's not doing what he did with Bill Cosby or R. Kelly or anyone else, making it a point to shoehorn them into every one of his insipid little monologues, or at least to make sure that he mentions them a couple of times per show, just to make sure that people don't forget we need to put these niggers behind bars. They always do that with black people. But in this case, that's not what they're doing with Jared Leto at all. Just like they didn't do it with Ezra Miller, is being treated as a freak show. Maybe somebody will follow up on it, but the white media won't. No steady drumbeat here, no interviews with their accusers. Now, obviously, Diddy's own problems are not over, and I'm not just talking about the white authorities' attempts to trash high-profile black men. Diddy is still facing some civil suits. The outcome of this trial takes a lot of wind out of those particular sails, but it's not going to stop it. This should serve as a lesson to all these black celebrities, especially the black male ones, though of course they'll learn nothing from it. They're only one bitter ex-girlfriend away from being the next R. Kelly or Bill Cosby. If you have a female groupie who's gained a few pounds and lost her looks, or some so-called assistant who figures that it's time to cash you out because their careers are not going to go anywhere, this is what awaits. Now, there is something that I do need to note, and this is just a matter of intellectual honesty here. R. Kelly was undoubtedly a creep. But let's stop lying. These girls, they know exactly what it is that they were doing when they were throwing themselves at him, just like with Jared Leto. Hey, I'm underage, and people have been saying for the longest time that children and adults are not supposed to have any sort of communication with each other, not personal anyway. But you know what? I'm going to reach out to this grown freaking man who's old enough to be my father, if not grandfather, and I'm going to see if I can get this guy to text me back. And I'm going to go to parties at his home, too, with a bunch of other underage girls, and we're going to see about going skinny dipping and such. This is not just something that happened with Jared Leto. You see it at these concerts and sporting events. There's all kinds of females there who will do literally anything to get these men's attention. And that includes sneaking off without their parents' permission, pulling some spy stuff in order to get close to these guys. Aaliyah was like 15 years old or so when she started seeing R. Kelly, and it was no secret. We can all agree that it's wrong for these grown freaking men to be messing with underage girls, and I agree. My problem happens to be, why is it that we're not telling these parents, you need to be keeping an eye on these girls, and not telling these girls, hey, you may not be adults, but you're not babies either. You know the difference between right and wrong, and you know exactly what it is that you're doing. This is the inevitable result of the pornification of the culture. Yes, you got a lot of creeps out there, but the truth of the matter is they also have a bunch of willing, quote-unquote, victims to go after too. And that's part of the story that needs to be told. The argument that the prosecutors used wasn't that this was merely a grown man messing with some underage people. Their entire case was that R. Kelly and P. Diddy and others were forcing themselves on these girls and making them do things, etc., etc. And that's not true at all. They didn't have to force them to do anything. These girls and women did whatever they could to get in front of these men and whatever they could to stay in front of them because that was their plan. You got these high-profile rich dudes, and let's see if there's any money that might actually fall into somebody else's pockets. There was no coercion necessary. Nobody was prevented from leaving. They chose to stay. And while in some cases there was abuse, the reality is these people knew exactly what they were in for. This has always been the case. And none of them left immediately afterwards. None of them were saying, oh, I got to get the heck out of here. This is part of that dysfunction that goes along with these high-profile celebrities, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And yeah, there's going to be some physical abuse, but understand something. These groupies and thoughts and these road rats, they already understand exactly what it is that they're getting themselves in for. And a lot of them, as far as they're concerned, it gets them bragging rights. Now, that doesn't mean that what R. Kelly was doing was right, but then again, as far as I'm concerned, if people only were concerned about R. Kelly after the Me Too movement, that means they weren't concerned about him at all. His predations on younger people was always well known. It wasn't a secret. So if we're going to be putting R. Kelly and others behind bars for the remainder of their days, that's fine. Just so long as we're also holding these parents of these underage girls accountable for the behavior they let their children grow into, and also a lot of these women who are clearly trying to find a way to put their hand in somebody else's pockets. Everybody's dirty in this case. There really is nobody to root for here. And to me, that's the saddest part about all of this. You got individuals who are dirty as hell with their raunchy lyrics and whatever stage shows that they're doing, and unfortunately, for a certain type of female at least, that happens to be catnip for them. Youth culture has always had its issues, mainly because you're dealing with young people. They don't think past the end of their nose. A lot of them think they know everything when they don't, and they don't really take full stock of the consequences of their actions. But we have to be honest about the fact that youth culture has actually gotten worse over the course of the last 30 or so years. And that's because parenting has also gradually gotten worse and worse over the course of the last 30 years. Nobody wants to take responsibility for what their kids are doing. Everybody, as far as they're concerned, I'm so overwhelmed, I'm just so overworked. And yet you chose to have children. And we all know that's the main reason why you got all of these parents who claim that they're just so liberal and that they're just so liberated with their kids and that they're so easygoing. No, it ain't easygoing, it's laziness. They don't want to have to put in the work of making sure that their child is disciplined, keeping an eye on them, and also making sure that their kid stays on the right path. That takes a lot of work, and a lot of these parents, as far as they're concerned, they want to be armchair parents. They want to raise their kids from the Barca Lounger while watching reruns of The Real Housewives of Who Gives a Damn. And meanwhile, they let the kids run the streets like a bunch of alley cats. That's the reason why these parents are so opposed to the kids taking any responsibility for their behavior, because ultimately the parents are trying to ward off responsibility for their own. They allow pop culture or whatever's trending to raise their children. And this is the result. The kids decide that they're going to emulate what they see, mainly because their parents have not educated them that A, the stuff you see on that screen is entertainment, and 2, that's not the kind of entertainment that you want to emulate. There's a ton of directionless kids out there because that's how the culture has gone. And having totally failed to instill any sort of values or virtues in the children, having failed to teach these kids the way that they're supposed to go, as a result, the kids sit there and do the one thing that they know how to do because, truth be told, that's all they know. And nobody ever told them that that's not okay. And as a result, almost the moment that these kids hit puberty, they're looking and going, ooh, this guy's right up my alley. This appeals to me because I think I can wiggle my bony behind in front of him and he won't know any better and it'll be some good dirty fun and I can brag to my gal pals. Well, for the celebrities who choose to go along with that kind of thing, I have no love in my heart for any of them because they've never done anything for anyone but themselves. My problem is that they're being used as proxies for black men in general, and that being the case, we gotta speak on that. And if anyone thinks that these prosecutors are going to be toning down their witch hunt for the next black man's head to put on their trophy wall, don't dream. If it wasn't Michael Jackson, it would be R. Kelly. If it wasn't R. Kelly, it would be Jussie Smollett. If it wasn't Jussie Smollett, it would be Jonathan Majors. If it wasn't Jonathan Majors, it would be somebody else. When it comes to these kind of cases, it's not about guilt or innocence. This happens to be a racial narrative writ large that's being perpetuated and promoted in the white media. That's what this is really about. Make sure that everybody understands whatever's going on. If it's a black man involved, it's the worst of the worst. So no, as far as I'm concerned, there's going to be more charges against some black figure or another because there always is. Cosby's conviction was overturned. And now Diddy managed to beat the most serious charges against him. The judge could still try to give him the harshest sentence, which would be 20 years, but that's highly unlikely. What is likely, however, is you're going to have some lawmakers somewhere who are going to be saying we need some new laws, and some prosecutors who are going to be saying, well, we got to find a way to come back from this L. We took some L's with this one, so we got to find a way to make up for that. Let's go ahead and find the biggest, blackest target that we can and light him up. But that's something that these black celebrities, especially the black male ones, they're just never going to get through their heads. Far as they're concerned, money is used for them to show off for their music videos or for their pals or for some photo op with some white media publication. It's real simple. You can either spend some money making sure that you get some people in positions who are actually there to insulate you and make sure that they understand that they're not supposed to be coming after you, or you can go ahead and spend all of that money on lawyers trying to keep yourself out of prison, which may, or most likely, may not work. And while for a number of them, if not a majority, they'll turn out like, say, Michael Jackson and Jonathan Majors, where ultimately they don't wind up doing any time, the reality is for a number of them, they will, however, wind up like R. Kelly. And when that happens, no matter how many hit albums you've had, that's going to be show over. Good evening, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Gwendolyn Langston, John Harvin, Mark Anderson, William Ross, and Dia Williams. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.